Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Blue Frontier. Very excited to be back amidst the World Cup to bring you part two of the team assessment, where we will be discussing the center attacking mid, center mid, and defensive midfield positions in detail, along with the Everton rumors encompassing the positions. As a reminder, this is going to be a multi-part deep dive. Part one, which we already recorded and you should definitely check out, was an overview of the squad's performance relative to the rest of the league, and we'll summarize that in a bit. But I'm going to hand it off to Ryan. But first, before I hand it off to Ryan, I want to ask him, because he attended the World Cup, one of the matches, as well as has watched a ton of games, and it seems like it's getting a lot of positive praise.
Yeah, it's pretty amusing. I did go to the Ivory Coast Curacao match, partially because it was the closest to me and the tickets were fairly affordable. I'll say this, though. I mean, the handling of the game by FIFA was kind of a joke. A lot of the stewards in there just were literally said to me, two separate people said to me, look, I'm sorry. It's not an Eagles game. We would have been much better organized, but they have us doing all sorts of stupid stuff. So I found that very amusing. People boo at the water breaks, by the way. I hate this idea that this is somehow America's fault that we have water breaks. I mean, do we have water breaks in MLS? Not unless it's really hot. I mean, which we've had for years. So I don't, it's all just kind of silly. I personally have really enjoyed all the Americans that don't watch football opining on how to make football better. That's been my favorite part, and just people losing their minds on it. I think soccer or football is really great, as is. I will say, though, one thing I will say this, Sean, I think is really helpful is, I mean, you can argue whether the Germany goal decided to be disallowed or not, but they have cleaned up all the nonsense in set pieces. And I think the product is much more enjoyable as a result. And people argued a lot about the millimeter stuff with offsides. No matter what standard you pick, there's going to be a toenail. And it's like that in virtually every sport. So unless you do away with it altogether. But the point I'm trying to make is that it's fairly quick. You know, it's not taking a long time. I love that they're not allowed to delay on throws. Subs have to happen quickly. I think a lot of it's good. I mean, it was a really fun match, man. You know, it's just a shame everything's so expensive.
Yeah, tough for just kind of the common consumer, right? Especially those traveling abroad, and credit to those that are coming to the U.S. to see their countries play. Affordability, unfortunately, with this tournament has kind of gone by the wayside. But to get into the team assessment, Ryan, just want you to kind of summarize real quick the things that we talked about, and then I'll go through the four common themes.
Yeah, that's the thing. We kind of isolated it into four main themes, and we'll apply those by position. But yeah, I think it's all just centers around, you know, the attack was so direct but not effective. Defending is very passive. We can't keep the ball. Other teams press the living daylights out of us. We just struggled to progress the ball and control matches in any other way other than being very direct and flying it up the pitch. And our personnel has us very limited in that regard, Sean. And I think in particular these positions, center mid, attacking mid too, to a certain extent, just having the players that can really help control the game better and progress the ball up the pitch is absolutely critical. But Sean, if you kind of rehash the big four kind of that we came up with, you know, the needs we had, and we have some positional ideas in mind. We'll get into those, though, very specific in the positions we talk about today.
Yeah, so to rehash the big four, the first one was need more open play creation from forwards and others. I think that's music to everyone's ears that supports this club. We definitely want that, especially from the fullback position, but even, you know, from our forward line, as well as just kind of that number 10, as you talked about. Need better progression. I mean, you look at the amount of players that we feel confident in progression, it's not very high. And so you look at the center mids and fullbacks in particular. Fullback will be a common criticism until we kind of really fill that need for this club. But you look at Ghana and Jared as pretty much the only ones that cut through the lines, right? And one of them might not be at the club next season. So it's just, we don't have any ball carriers either. And Garner just needs more freedom to do it. He's just kind of been a Swiss Army knife, and he's played almost every position besides goalkeeper this season. So you need also him to kind of get some stability in being able to not only utilize that skill, but improve that skill. And so then you get to ball retention and being press resistant. And that goes for center mids and center backs, right? You look at our center backs, I think they look like a deer in their headlights when they have any sort of press, and the amount of hoofball that happens. So, you know, once again, it gets back to the fullbacks, but you look at wingers also having to do so much dirty work and dropping, just given just the personnel that we had out there. But having center backs that are able to progress, right? A healthy Jared makes a ton of difference, but just think of Jared having a partner that can do that, as well as just a better wing back line that would be able to just be confident with the ball, let alone progress it. and not just have to kind of give it away every time would go a long way. And I think number 4, and it might be the most important as just a common theme as a whole, but better athletes, right? I give this team so much credit for the ability to grind and what they've done throughout seasons, whether it's staying in the league or just even for some parts of this season, really getting some good results. But we really need to become more athletic. And I think you see that as a stark contrast when we play teams like Leeds, when you see teams that are so athletic. It's not that we're not as skilled as them in certain positions, but it's just when the athleticism difference is multiple standard deviations, it's hard to compete. And I think as the match goes on, especially David Moyes, not making the substitutions that would be needed in a game like that, it's just one of those problems that can fix itself if we really try to, really focus on that when you look at this summer's recruitment.
The better athletes. The very last thing I'll add to on that one is we looked a lot of physical data too. There's some cool tools that we have, and we're going to use them again in this episode, but we just weren't as active this past year either, athleticism on talk about activity. So, okay. So how this episode's going to go, and hopefully how the other positional ones are going to go. I mean, the fullbacks one is going to be absolutely outrageous, but consider we need like 3 or 4 of them. But this one, and there's a big wrinkle to this one, but what we're going to do is we're going to look at who's still here first at each position. And we initially broke it up, Cam separate from center mid, defensive mid, probably because we kind of need a particular profile there. We're going to go through the same indexes and models that we had before and objectively rate rankings and performance of our current guys. And then we're going to apply, different criteria, other considerations, and come out with names. And, we're going to hit room. We'll talk about players on a free. We're still budget conscious, relegation opportunities. And then we're going to get through our own data models and some of the names that came out and maybe throw some wild cards in there as well. I mean, look, we did this last year. Maybe don't have the amount of names as we had last year. I don't think that would be possible. But yeah, we're going to get into the names, and it should be fun. And I think the wrinkle today is we would normally be going position by position, but we're going to hit Cam and center mid, defensive mid first in terms of what do we have coming back and what the performance looks like. But before we get into that, it's very important that we talk about the current rumor mill. And we're going to talk about wingers and center forwards first, but we just felt like here at the Blue Frontier that we didn't need to surge forward into the great unknown. Let's deal with apparently the positions we're trying to address right away. So, Sean, I will leave it to you. I initially threw in Fabrizio in here, but it's really Bobble and Paul Joyce. I don't want to give Paul Joyce credit for anything, but more so Bobble. It seems like we have a midfielder. I think the question is he the right profile? I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, so who Ryan is referring to, and I think if you don't live under a rock, you know what we're referring to, and that's Hayden Hackney. He is reported to be having a medical on Wednesday, so for his move to Merseyside. There's been some conversation on the fee. You look at Ben Jacobs, he says £25 million. What we've seen kind of is 16.5 million with some add-ons. 3 of those million add-ons are Champions League add-ons. So if that's the case, I don't think they're going to see them for some time. But I would say initial impressions, and I think Hayden Hackney is a polarizing player for a plethora of reasons. Of course, Championship Player of the Year has, I would say, a very flamboyant way of playing. But I think from my end, and I know Ryan will absolutely take his time with his measured and rational analysis of Hayden Hackney, but I think he's a good player. I think he is technically gifted. I think it will be a big jump up. A lot of what he does at the championship level, I think he will have to adjust facing, somebody like Moises Caicedo versus what he's kind of facing in the championship. But there's no question that, his stats pop off the page. I think when you think of just progression, I think possession, I think he can possess the ball. I think my worry is that he almost has no fear when it comes to taking guys on. And for a team that I don't think right now is built to, counter ball losses, that is something that I think he's going to have a tough time with if he doesn't adjust his game. But the skill is there, in my opinion. I think he has a lot of the tools that are capable of being successful. I just wonder if he's able to adjust his game. And more than anything, I don't know where he's going to play. I think that's the hardest part of just given the personnel that we have. I think the actual numbers, like objectively, look decent for a guy that's 1 year left on his deal. So I think Middlesbrough is doing okay there. I just think from our end, it's when you look at KDH Garner, Ghana, if he's still here, and then you look at others that are potentially going to come in at positions of need, like a 6. I just don't know where his position comes in. So I think that was a little bit long-winded, but it's just, I'm excited about the player. I think I'm just a little bit nervous about the fit.
Let's run through our 4 categories, right? Need more open play creation from forwards and others. I think he could slot into a Cam, I guess, too. And that's a wrinkle, because I think your point is, where does he play matters. For us, has he addressed the need at all? Not an obvious one to me, and that's why I continually get frustrated with Everton's recruitment, where we're not addressing the needs. And some people say, well, it doesn't matter what order you do that in. Well, we didn't address any of them last year. So it didn't matter what order we did them last year. We didn't address them. And I'm not sure this one necessarily addresses one. But I'll say number 2, we need better progression. The guy's a progression monster. I mean, he carries the ball, he passes the ball, cuts through lines. Again, my issue with him is, look, I'll spare you all the metrics. They're outrageous. They're off the charts. The progression numbers are insane. Even the creation is very good, too. My issue is, some of the metrics I don't like is his amount of turnovers. He gives the ball away constantly, especially trying to carry it. So it's great that you can carry the ball, but you give it away all the time. So that's not helpful necessarily, and you're not going to be able to, your point is, you're not going to be able to get away with that in the Premier League. Can you adjust and still be effective, still be progressive, without just blindly taking risks? I think he's a bad decision maker, to be perfectly honest. He just turns and forces everything constantly. And again, that was his role. I feel bad for Aiden Morris. He had to clean up for him constantly, which is just hilarious. I hate him defensively. I mean, he's very upright. He plays this matador nonsense where he just goes right at guys. He just lets them go. Drives me crazy. But anyway, that's 2. So number 3 is ball retention, press resistance, and I'm just concerned about that. If you play him deeper, I think he's 2. He's not risk-averse enough to play deeper. He scares me in that position. Maybe if you need something, that's fine. Better athletes. He's a good athlete. He's not a bad athlete at all. The physical numbers are very good on him. He does work. He goes back and forth and up and down, but I think a lot of it is designed to attack and get the ball forward. And again, like Shan, we need all these things to an extent. He's an extreme example of the things we need, but for 16.5 million pounds, it sounds like the 5 million are in appearances. So I would hope that we're going to eventually eat that. So it's 21, 22 million pounds for a player I don't see that we need necessarily, but he can help. I just want 2 fullbacks and a proper defensive mid, man. Like, I don't. So I think it's helpful if we get into the different positions and see, because in some ways he can kind of fill in a couple different roles, and maybe that allows us to jettison some players, and there's a net benefit. Look, he just turned 24. He's not old, but he's not super young either, according to my son. Made it very clear to me. He said, 24? Dad, that's not young. I mean, what is our manager? Does he understand that? I'm like, okay, you're 16, calm down. So I would say this. I mean, we know Moyes plays 4-2-3-1. Right, Shan? So I think we kind of, let's look at what we got at Cam. Let's look at what we got at center mid, defensive mid, and, where do we think he might play best? So, okay, first of all, let's take a step back. Who do we have at Cam and who could play there?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think the obvious one is Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall, right, who had a very solid debut season. But then the non-obvious one, if you're just kind of more just watching what's on the pitch, is Charlie Alcaraz. He's just kind of, agent forgotten, just given the lack of utilization as well as just the injuries that he's had this season. And then you look at kind of the maybes, right? Merlin Roll as well as Harrison Armstrong, Iliman Njai, and Jack. If Jack's loan gets converted, which we think will. So you look at the Wyscout Index top 30 attacking mids, Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall is 8th. So he's definitely shown that he can play the position. And I think you look at the skill level, you think it just the fit. Yeah, he's absolutely shown that.
I think the problem is, though, the performance index that we use in Skill Corner, on ball, Cam, it's not as good. Like, there's 119 Premier League midfielders. And if we're looking at all midfielders, Dewsbury-Hall is 36th out of 119. It's okay. But like Ghana is 82, Charlie 89, Garner 97. So there is room for a player in there, I think. Ironically, if you look at that same index on ball, Cam, in the English Championship, Hayden Hackney's number 2. So, it's funny, too, in that index, too, the top players are the guys you would think. Damsgaard, Odegaard. Wirtz is still pretty decent, even if his output wasn't great. Bruno Fernandes, Jeremy Pino, honestly, even though in limited minutes. So I think that there's some opportunity that maybe Hackney could slide in here. I think it's very obvious to look and think Charlie Alcaraz has a year left. Moyes has clearly not favored him. I hate the fact that his value's probably dropped. Like, the point of exercising the option, you would obviously always exercise the option if the market value of the player was higher than the option. Well, it probably was when we exercised it. I was an advocate of him being sold because I knew Moyes didn't like him. I knew Moyes wasn't going to play him, even though I think he's really good and effective. And I'll tell you what, man, his physical numbers are outstanding. He, in terms of work rate, in terms of just activity, like, stood out in the team assessment. So you need someone that can replace those things. I will say this, Hackney's numbers are similar in terms of activity and moving the ball forward and getting it forward. And if he could play a little bit some other different positions, maybe he's a decent substitute for Charlie and better and more flexible. But let's go through the four again real quick, Sean. So if we are going to get a cam, knowing Hackney's coming in, he's probably fine. Like, I highly doubt we're going to look at too much here. But, okay, I think you'd really look at maybe a standout that could play wing as well, that can really bring more open play creation, right? I think that would be absolutely key. He brings some of that. He brings some progression. I don't think you got to worry about it with him, but someone that maybe can really get on the ball more and is very athletic. So I don't know. It would have to be a dare to be great situation, I think, Sean, for us to bring in more of an attacking midfielder, but maybe a combination of wings. So, like, to me, when I look through this, does this seem like if Hackney's coming and we have a need, it almost sounds like we've got surplus.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another point I'll make regards to Hayden Hackney is he could eventually be a James Garner replacement. I think you look at Elliot Anderson, right, going for $130 million. I don't think James Garner is a $130 million player, but you look at the market for center mids. Mateus Fernandez is looking like he's going for $85 million, right?
85.
I know. And so I only say that not because I love Jimmy, right? Like, I don't.
There's some similarities to Hackney,
yeah,
though, like in terms of activity.
Exactly.
And, like,
yeah.
Fernandez takes some risks sometimes that I even look at. Like, and, you know, there's personal preference, Sean. Like, for me, I really don't like players that just have no conscience, that have the ego, frankly, to be like, I'm making that play. You know, I'm going to be the one. I'm getting on it. I'm the superstar. So it'll be interesting to see how he can adjust. And if he can dial it back just a little bit, he could be a very useful player. But it drives me crazy, man. Like, I really struggle with players like this. I don't like him. And but he brings a lot that we need. So okay. I mean, I think there's some usefulness for him. Let's look at center mids and defensive mids too, Sean. I mean, I think we've got some concerns about him playing deeper defensively. He can get on the ball a little bit defensive, you know, deeper, and it seems like we need that a little bit. But we've got a bunch of players coming back, but I don't think any one of these really fit a certain profile. You know, it seems like we just still lack that. We lacked it last year.
Yeah, I mean, having a 6 or even just kind of a functional 8 is still an absolute need. And you look at just kind of the guys that you mentioned, Ryan, Garner, Roll, Tamir Bunham, and Harrison Armstrong. You look at the top 30 defensive mids. Garner's number 1, Ghana's number 11th, Tim number 20. And then you look at just kind of the 100 out of the 119 midfielders at number 6. Ghana's 53, Garner's 71, Tim 73. So kind of not too surprising there. I think just given, you know, especially Garner, that he's not a 6, but then also like where he's been playing.
Right. I mean, he's been an effective defensive mid, but when we talk about a 6 in the profile you just gave out of the 119, the fact that we have no one above 53 and Ghana is well above Garner, talks about the type of profile we're looking at. Someone that can drop deep, get on the ball, progress the ball on the pitch, carry the ball, hold the ball. Someone that can control the game, and we've really struggled doing that this past year. And ironically, in that same index, guess what Hayden Hackney was? Number 2 in the English Championship in that index, too. By the way, that should give you an idea how outrageous his numbers are. The fact that he's number 2 in on-ball attacking midfielders and number 2 at Dynamic 6. And he's also, by the way, I mentioned this, number 2 in box-to-box midfielders index that we have. I mean, you know, the numbers are insane. But, Sean, this is the same need as we have last year. I literally copied and pasted the stuff we had last year about progression and ball retention. And I'm kind of curious what profile you think would be right. In me, what I have in my head is like someone a bit taller, a little bit more disciplined, that can sit deeper, that they're a good athlete. They're a physical athlete that can overwhelm people. but that can really distribute the ball. They don't have to carry it much. They need to be active deeper, but someone that can really ping it around a little bit so our people don't have to come back and, receive the ball from the center backs. Someone that can really be that anchor. And I really would like to see us try to play a 4-3-3 sometimes, I don't think Moyes is against that, even though he's mostly a 4-2-3-1 guy. But the problem is, if we really want to go big and get a very good player here, they also still have to play in a 2. Like, they have to be able to play in that middle of 4-4-2. So I think those are considerations. So I think in this one, Sean, out of the 4 we have, I don't care about open play creation here deeper, but we need progression, right? That's number 2. Ball retention, press resistance to me is the most important thing in a better athlete. But to me, the ball retention, press resistance is, we just don't have that. Even James Garner, who's very good on the ball, he does not carry the ball well. His first touch has gotten better. His ball control is not outstanding. He's not going to escape from people. We need more of that. Is Hayden Hackney that guy? It's interesting. Sometimes he looks it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say so, but I would also say that it would be interesting, especially if Hayden Hackney's on social media, or if you've seen kind of Everton, right, and looked at some of our games, I think he'd do a lot of service, right, to understand the development James Garner has had, right, in this team, and really becoming a defensive stalwart, right, and Jimmy Garner is not the most intelligent footballer on that side. I think what he's done, though, is be incredibly tactful when it comes to his timing, when it comes to, I think, where he is on the pitch. And I think given that he's had a lot of responsibility, I think there are times, right, where the stats are also inflated. So I think from that standpoint, I'm very curious with Hackney, right? It's hard to make a specific prediction on him because I think the skill level is there. I think the appetite is there. I think it's a good move for him career-wise, right? I don't think going to a United or somewhere like that would be kind of in his best interest. I think genuinely, the hardest part about this move is just where he's going to play and who he's going to play next to. That to me is the biggest question. I don't worry about, I think, the skill level. I think I worry about that, as well as just him changing his game a little bit or toning it down, as you mentioned, given, the new landscape that he's playing in.
Yeah, if he's playing Cam, he can have that'll be perfectly fine. So it just depends on kind of how he floats in. Now, the problem is we got a lot of numbers in there, too. So we will go back, and before we hit names, we'll hit all the rumors, including outgoings, because there's just too many players in there. So, but let's first start out with the 10s, So, okay, incomings. We've had all sorts of interesting rumors. Ethan Nwaneri is one. I don't think there's any chance in HE double hockey sticks he would come, but he's a dare-to-be-great type player is fine. We're just not going to be able to afford someone like this. A man after your own heart, though, Sean, is one to consider.
Yeah, and that's Abdel Fattah. I think I have banged the drum as much as I can with him. I think the only thing I worry about is Leicesteritis, in the sense of just, now League One. It warms my heart that Jordan Ayew is going to lead the charge for them. I think it's a perfect marriage in that sense. But you look at Fattah, I think his numbers, both creation as just well as actual output, have been fantastic. I can't imagine a League One team demanding a big fee for him. So even if you have to pay, let's say 10, 15 million, I think it's worth it for somebody that has the ceiling of his and is kind of just a bit of a utility guy when you think of just looking at our team. He gives a new element that we don't have. So I think it's a no-brainer, but I also believe that we aren't going to be the only club after him.
No, and I think the fact that he can play right wing and he can come in and slot in the middle. In fact, I think his game is a little more natural down the middle at times, or at least coming back to the ball, more of a possession type winger, but very athletic, very explosive. I've heard some interesting things in the Ghana camp. His attitude, he is very confident, we'll say this. I have some other funny stories about that, but I will save them for another day. Gustavo Hammer, we're going to link with him. He's 28 at this point. Please know if you hear these. And here's the thing. When you hear some of these names, come on, man. So another rumor, Arthur Atta, Udinese. I mean, they're looking for 40 million. We're not going to move and spend 40 million here, right, Sean? Someone like Konstantinos Karetsas, who at Genk is, let me tell you what, this kid, he's only 18. You want to see skill, first touch? Oh my goodness. Little guy, lefty. Wonderful. But again, they're going to ask for a fortune. So these are the types of names that are really interesting links, but I think Hackney coming in kind of shoots down some of these things. Outgoings, nothing concrete really about Charlie here. But you got to assume they're going to put him out in the shop, right? I mean, he could play left wing. I think he's a very useful player, but I just can't. He's got a year left, which was stupid. I can't believe that we did the contract that way. Moyes in essence redid it when he came back in. His value certainly dropped, but Shan, he almost has to be moved. Don't we expect that?
Yeah, I would expect that. I think it's unfortunate because Hackney almost forces them out, right? Which it's they're not in any way, I would say, the same player. Charlie's very explosive. I think, a madman in that way, in the best ways. But I also think too, it's you have way too many seats for that position now. And even though they're not the same player, I think when you're from an Everton point of view, right, you have to kind of cash in on sellable assets, right? And he's not to the point where his market value is higher or the same. You probably have to take a little bit of a loss, but you might get lucky with one of the South American clubs, right, where they might be able to pay, kind of around what we paid for them. So yeah, it's the way they kind of structured that contract. I think was not good, especially when you look at not having control over kind of the years, because if we had another year, I believe we have a team option, but I think even then it's just you put yourself in a tough spot. So and then you look at, there's really nothing else, but then you look at the free agents, and it's kind of grim in the sense of, you look at Bernardo Silva, I believe he's already gone to Spain. Yeah. So that was never going to happen, just to be clear.
No.
Yeah, Julian Brandt, no thanks.
Might go to Roma. Actually, that's the latest one. He's an interesting player. I'll say this, though, Shan, in all honesty, I mean, if you got maybe at the 6, you know what I mean? If you got some of these veteran guys, like one veteran in here, if they're cheap and the value's there, it'd be interesting. Probably not at this position, though. Dashi Kamada, no. He's
going back to Palace, I believe. So
really?
Yeah.
Last time I thought he was going to Milan.
I know. Yeah, I saw that. It was kind of a surprise. Skillful player, but I also think too, it kind of, none of these guys really fit the athletic, piece of it.
Lorenzo Pellegrini from Roma, wonderful player, but yeah, not the. Do you like some of the other names I threw in here, by the way?
Oh yeah, I mean, you want to go blast from the past, right? We go FIFA 16, and it's Jesse Lingard, James Rodriguez, and Ross Barkley.
I mean, look, Jesse Lingard made an impact with David Moyes, man. Yeah, he's at Corinthians. You remember that? He was in the K League before. James, you got to admit, still looks amazing in the World Cup. He looks so good. That is not going to happen. Would we sign Ross Barkley?
I don't think so. And it's not, as much as we want to make fun of it, it's just I don't. He's not going to play, and he probably can go somewhere else where he can play. So yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. You look at relegation teams. Pablo, West Ham fans could not hate this guy more. No thanks. Has potential. Mateus Mane. I know a lot of conversation in the Discord. Even if we were interested, after spending what we did for Tyler Dibbling, I do not see us doing the same thing back-to-back windows. And that's not to say they're the same player. It's just paying that much money on an 18-year-old to sit on the bench. No thanks. Burnley's interesting because you have Hannibal and then you have Marcus Edwards. Both okay players, but once again, we're trying to kind of progress, not regress. Yeah. And I just feel like those are regression signings.
I mean, Hannibal, as a profile, is pretty good. He's very active. He kind of runs around a lot and stuff, but I just don't think he's good enough either. So yeah, no one in there really.
He would lead Everton in red cards by far too. He would find a way. He gets away with a lot. He would not get away with it here. So
that's
Ryan,
probably true.
Do you want to go through some of these names in this next list? Because it's pretty entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, so we ran some data. We used the on-ball cam index that we had before and looked at some players. And, I mean, some of these are just, it's not a chance. But like Matthias Sule is up there. We are not getting him from Roma. Would I love it? Yes. If there was one guy you wanted, you know what I mean, in an off season, when we get to a point where we can just go 2 or 3 just pure quality guys, that would be the type of thing that you would love to see, I just can't see that happening. Older guys, Harris, Pascal Gross, Thorgan Hazard. I mean, this is what happens when I threw in Anderlecht and some of those lower leagues in here when those guys can just kill it. Florian Thaven. I love it, man. Oh, boy. Adrian Thomason, at Lens. He actually was really productive. Golovin, super player. Not going to happen. Just turned 30. He was linked before. I mean, guys like Dick Kettler, who actually at Atalanta, that type of guy, if you could get a tall right winger that was powerful, lefty, when we went big and we didn't get jacked, I mean, there's too many big names interested, but man, I would love to go big on a player like that. But we're not getting to wingers yet, my friend. We will get there. Valentin Barco, gone. Kosu, who, we saw what he did against the U.S., very inconsistent. He's a really disappointing player, by the way. Can I just mention that? Okay, one name that I thought was really interesting here, though, Divine Mukasa. 18-year-old Man City was on loan at Leicester. Market value is only $5 million, but he was almost all a cam for Leicester. He's 6'2". He's really interesting. This would be the type of player maybe under a different manager, Sean, where you would bring in. And they could maybe sit on the bench a little bit, maybe you loan him out or something and really, kind of ease in. Like if you really wanted a dynamic playmaker, because I will say this, even with Hackney, Dewsbury-Hall, there really isn't that free-flowing, true creative force in there. I mean, Hackney still does it from a little bit deeper. I mean, I would love to eventually have that player. I don't think we have him. We probably have enough options that it doesn't matter. But, again, we're looking for a dare to great type situation, maybe that was cheap. You know what I mean? This would be an interesting type of player. Probably not going to happen, though.
No, agree. And I think it's one of those where if Everton's in a better position, right, you can probably buy a guy like that for 5 to 10 million, put him on the bench or put him in the academy, and then for cup games and whatnot, give him that chance, right, to be in the first 11.
Right.
But I just think we don't have the luxury, and then also to you look at just surplus, right? We need to spend that money at positions of need. So
yeah. So a couple wild cards here just because they're fun. Remember Georgi Sudakov? What has happened to him? He's only 23 still. He can play left wing. Someone's going to move for him eventually. Kang-In Lee. Remember all the links to him last year? I mean, really more of a winger, but it would be interesting to have a player like this that was dynamic, that could really change us. Maybe Hackney's that guy, but I just don't see it happening. What about Gio Reyna?
Yeah, the Forest legend. I don't really see that one either. Going into the USA. Diego Luna would be fun, man.
I love Diego Luna.
A fun replacement for Charlie that wouldn't play under David Moyes, but regardless, I think would really be very fitting American, right? To kind of
very fitting American. I mean, by the way, listeners, if you don't know who Diego Luna is, just look up a couple pictures. It's very hard to describe him. I think what did I write down here? Yeah, he's built like a refrigerator. He absolutely is. Like he looks like he can't be fit, but he is. He's just built that way. Fantastic kid, but I mean the tattoos and stuff makes him look like here's my quote: some cartel hitman's little brother. I don't mean to be offensive by that, but I mean it really. I mean anyway. Doesn't matter. He's a really fun player, though. I wish. So Sean, I think if you asked me, I could see us moving for a winger that has some positional flexibility, and you may even argue that Tyler Dibling could maybe move in and play this way, or Njai. So I don't think we'll move for a player here. But someone like Fatawu, if you're thinking he could play winger or not, I think it would be great if we could. It would just be more of a luxury, but I think that's interesting. I think bringing in Hackney kind of kills any idea that we'd make an investment here.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Fatawu only makes sense because if you're looking at just kind of opportunities, right? There's very few times you get a player of his caliber at that price. I think some of the concerns you have of character and ego are incredibly valid. It's not the Ghana camp, it's Leicester as well. So for me, like that's just kind of from a value standpoint makes sense, because then it also gives you the luxury if you find that Tyler Dibling still needs to kind of go out on loan, right? You can do that and be okay. But yeah, it's a position where I see them maybe taking a flyer, but just as you mentioned, giving the Hackney investment, it just doesn't make sense given every other need that we have on the team.
Okay. Now for the big show, my friend. Center mids, defensive mids. I know. We know Moyes likes his 4-2-3-1. So, again, we're looking for people. We talked about the four things. To me, the retention is really critical. The progression's important, too. It'd be nice to have a good athlete, but we're really looking for someone that can play, in essence, deeper, I think, more complementary on the ball with James Garner, and maybe someone that could still defend in the 4-4-2 in the middle. And I think that's the concern about Hackney. So I still think we're looking for a profile here, but let's talk about the incoming rumors first, because there's been a big one recently that I'm really interested about. I do like this player.
Yeah, and Ryan's referring to Mandela Keita, who plays for Parma. And I mean, Ryan, I'm excited about this one. I think just one thing on the defensive midfielder position and the six in general. The hard part with this position, and you just look at kind of the position as a whole, market values and such, is Everton are in a unique spot, right? You look at somebody like Lamine Camara, who would be a dream. You have to pay pretty much twice the fee that you'd have to pay for Mandela Keita, because you're getting a player that's further developed, of course younger, but is just kind of all world at certain things. Mandela Keita is not that. However, physical profile is good. He definitely kind of can show you when it comes to the profile of a 6 and just a guy that keeps it simple, moves around well, I think is mobile. A lot of the things, athleticism, right, that we're excited about. So I think this is a position where if we're going to pay a certain fee, right, we have to kind of be a little bit tempered in our expectations. We pay for a floor with the development of the ceiling, right, and where that player becomes, right, that Lamine Camara, or at least just gets to a level where they're very functional and fill that need for Everton.
Now, I would have personally considered going bigger there if there was the player, to really just lock him in there playing with Jimmy, have some other people rotate in, and I wouldn't have bothered with Hayden Hackney, but that's just me. But yeah, I mean, Keita, the market value is 20 million euros right now on transfer market. I think they're asking for maybe a little bit more than that, according to other reports. We are a Premier League team, they're going to try and get as much as they can from us. But I think in that price range, he's interesting. So I have watched him a bit. I'd watched him in the past for other reasons as well. So I'll kind of go through some of my notes, Sean, because I'm excited about this guy too. I'll say this. I mean, he's 24. So it's not like I wish he was playing like this at 21, but then he'd probably be 60 million. Yeah, I mean, he's about 5'11". He's not small. His lower half is very thick, but he's really flexible. He's fluid. He's athletic. He doesn't go in and hammer people. He actually doesn't foul much at all, which is really kind of interesting. He's fairly passive with his passing. Like, he's very simple. He moves it around very well, very quickly, incredibly quickly. His feet are good. 1-2s, one touch. Every now and then you see him cut it loose, and mostly in wide areas. He's not so much vertical, and it looks really good to me. Like, it looks flowy. Shows some ability to play higher. I mean, they had him playing a little bit more left center mid. Beginning of the season, he was playing more as a defensive mid, the role that we think we really would need. Yeah, I mean, he just looks coordinated, Sean. He strikes the ball well. He's very clean on it. And I think when I say passing is basic, to me, I still look for precision. Right foot, right weight. And I see it. He likes to keep it on the ground. He can shape it a little bit. And I'd say this, he protects the ball pretty well under pressure. And to me, that's really important. He'll carry it when someone gives him space, but he really doesn't take too many chances with it. And I think, like what did I say, press resistant, taking care of the ball, our number 3, I think is the most important in this role. And I think he has that. Doesn't look great in the air. I wouldn't mind a little bit more length, kind of someone that he's a physical player, he's a good athlete, but he doesn't seem like, you know what I mean? When you've watched it, I know you've watched him a little bit too. Like, he doesn't seem like this physical presence. And even when I see him go into duels, sometimes he can be clean too, and his recovery pace is good enough to catch up. But I don't know why. Like, sometimes I feel like he needs to grab the guy or just hit him or hack him. You know what I mean? Or going a little bit harder. And some of his angles, he can get a little bit high. 1v1, some of his reactions are a little slow. But he reads the game as a collective pretty well. So I think as long as he's sitting back deeper, I think he'll be fine. I think he can improve on little things. And real quick, the data talked about the fouls. Not much progression, but the ball retention's there. The work rate isn't crazy high, but the athleticism is. And I think the work rate is more of a byproduct of kind of how they played. So, Sean, I mean, the profile doesn't sound bad.
No, it's an exciting profile, and I think you mentioned just being able to retain the ball under pressure. I think if we're able to improve the back line, right, that helps him as much as it can help the others, just given that he won't have to force the issue. And I think we have enough players,
Sure.
Up top, and you look in our midfield that are happy to do that. So
and maybe fullbacks, right, Sean?
Yeah,
I mean, if we invest
100%.
in more progressive fullbacks that can get up the pitch and whatnot, and he can feed them, and they can take more of the risks. I mean, if you have someone like Hayden Hackney in the midfield that we already know lacks restraint at times, and you want him to be creative, this is the type of guy who maybe could also allow Jimmy Garner to get forward a little bit more and try and use that right foot as a weapon. So I think we need this type of player. Is this kid an automatic starter? Will be phenomenal. I don't know. I don't know if he's quite at that level, but it's the right profile to me. I might opt for some other players with maybe a little bit higher ceiling, but I think there's a lot to like in this kid, and there's a lot to like in the profile. Put it this way. When you see the name, it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, if this was our first signing of the summer, I think people would be very happy. I think universally, you're getting out of the Premier League, right? And you're looking at a different profile. Yes, the age is a little bit on the higher side. It's not egregious, but I also think, too, at a position like this, you also it's very hard to get true value, right, at the defensive midfield position, because you just look, somebody like you said, if he was 21, he'd probably be 40, 50 million, right? And so just you unfortunately have to kind of just be very tactical in these moments. Speaking of tactical, we'll get to the next name, and it's a good one, Shea Charles. Lots of interest there. From the Premier League as a whole, I've seen a lot of links to Leeds. Southampton signed him from Manchester City for 12.3 million. A very good signing. Athletic profile is quite good. Seems very comfortable defending deeper. I think had a really solid season for Southampton amidst Spygate for them. I think the thing that he's also struggling with is you don't really see the scanning and awareness at times that you would expect from somebody like him. But I think the biggest question is how he is off the ball, especially you look at when they were under Russell Martin, and you look at some of the other kind of just coaches that they've had. They try to be possession based, so it'll be interesting just from a new system, new tactics, right? How he kind of handles that.
Yeah, the things I like, just the athleticism, the athletic profile, and he's very defensive conscious, and he would help, he would protect the center backs a lot. I like that aspect of the profile. But he's only 22. There's room for him to grow in those areas of finding space and stuff, even if he's not perfectly natural. That brings me into another young player, too, and I frankly just like saying his last name. Really. Right. Mukau. Ngali Mukau. It's beautiful, man. It just rolls off the tongue. I'm talking about the player. He's 21 at Lille. We talked about him last year. Yeah, he was more of a defensive player in Belgium. He's played more of an attacking role. He's played back and forth as well. He's just a massive guy, 6'2". My concern was that maybe he wasn't quite as fluid, but he's massive. And there are moments where he looks really clean, and I think he's continued to improve. I think he's an interesting player with a lot of potential, but is this someone that you're just going to drop right into the Premier League and he's going to go crazy? Maybe not quite. Not crazy, but I'm sure someone like this Moyes would look at and probably take him a bit to kind of get fully up to speed. But I would be excited about this player too.
In a perfect world, right? If we had money to spend, you almost look at somebody like Keita and Mukau, just given the development piece of Mukau, and he's a little bit more of a Swiss Army knife in the sense of you put him at the 8, you could probably put him at the 6, and so like you said, it's just some of the technical pieces.
He's looked decent in the cup for Congo.
Yeah, so I just think it's one of those situations where I think Moyes would actually like him just from a physical standpoint, right? You look at like just how much he values Tim, and he's, I would say, far more technically gifted than Tim is. Right, the effort levels of Tim are off the charts, but when you think of just execution, it's remains to be seen. So I think this is a player that, I know Moyes kind of has this adage with young players. I don't think he would have it with this guy. I think he would play him if that's the choice that we would make. My only worry is we need so much from this position, and I also think too it's like somebody like Keita, we're not asking too much from a ball progression passing standpoint, as you mentioned, but just the intelligence, just the ability to kind of be settled in. I see that more from a guy like Keita than I would Mukau, but I like you. I really like the player.
So let's go through a couple more of these rumors too, because we've been linked so many darn midfielders. Cesare Casade at Torino, 23 years old. Yeah, you're giving him a big no. Apparently Chelsea has a sell-on clause. He's not even playing regularly with Torino, but he's 6'4". He's a massive guy. Physical numbers don't look great enough for me. He's okay on the ball.
Harry Sutar's 6'7".
I know.
Yeah.
This is one where interesting player. What do you do with him? Not sure. Again, if you had bought in the guy already in a dare to be great situation, but he's already 23. This one, I'm going to really struggle to say anything positive here. I don't care that he's an American. So for full disclosure, this is one of my least favorite players in major football that we could possibly be linked with. And the second we did, I also have some issues with Hayden Hackney too. I'll be honest. I don't like how he plays, but this one drives me crazy.
Yeah, and it's Tanner Tessman, and I know Ryan could extend the podcast by about an hour just talking about Tanner, but I think just no is the best way to kind of say that. I will say some really good news today. Thomas Souček has confirmed that he is staying at West Ham next season, so we don't need to worry about that. Also, get well soon. I think he had a pretty bad injury in the World Cup, if I'm not mistaken, so sad to see that because he's a great guy, but just not for Everton. And then you look at Issa Doumbia.
Wait, can I trash Tanner Tessman more, please?
Sure.
No?
Yeah, please.
No, we'll move on. Darn it. Yeah, Issa's interesting play. Is he a defensive mid? I just don't think he quite fits the profile, even if he's a big athlete.
Yeah, I don't know what he is. I think he is a master of none, which I don't know if that's a compliment or a significant insult, but like I don't, just from the limited viewing I've had of him, when I look at just pure needs, and when I look at also too having midfielders that do a lot of things but not one thing really well, he kind of fits that. And so that's just somebody that we don't need. This name's interesting, I think, just from a talent point of view, but you look at both the outlay and the age, not so much.
Well, the funny part is like we just mentioned, Issa Doumbia, he's moving to Sporting. So it doesn't matter, right? And so Sporting themselves are trying to deal their beloved defensive mid, Morten Holmand. So he's, a tall guy. He turns 27 later this month, and he's the guy that would ping it around. Like, this is the right profile, at least for a player, like an on-ball guy. But they also signed Silas Anderson from Hacken. Let me tell you what, Silas Anderson's awesome. I'm telling you right now, I love Silas Anderson. He is a fantastic player. I've watched him for other purposes. Love him. Absolutely adore him. So Sporting need to move Morten basically at this point. Transfer market has him at $40 million. There's no way he's going to be that expensive. But he's a dynamic player, and I think a more mature team would do well to get him. I don't think it's not going to happen. I think Keita's a better use of money, I think, for this position. Okay, outgoing Sean. There's been some rumors in Tim. Not many recently, though, but I think, you know what I mean? I see us moving them.
Yeah, I do too. And I think the interest from what we've seen is Borussia Dortmund is the latest team. I know Lazio had significant links last season for the most part. Too. Stuttgart. So I think as the World Cup kind of wanes, you'll probably start to see more of his conversation, just because he's not playing in the World Cup, right? And so it just feels like names that are not associated with that. You're not seeing as much traction. Market value is 18 million. I am so curious at what, if Everton do sell him, and I believe they will, what they would get for him, because you could convince me that they could get 10 million euros. You could convince me that they'd get 20 million euros. I was on record thinking that Dwight McNeil wouldn't get more than 5. And then, of course, Crystal Palace almost pays 20. So it's just, I don't know. I think Tim's ceiling in regards to right fit, right system, he has a role. I think there are specific leagues that his athleticism will shine more than the Premier League. And so, and I also think, too, he's a great character, right? Like works his tail off. I think is, when you look at that PSR deal, we definitely got the better end of it. So for me, I really hope that if we do sell him, he goes to a good, because I'd love to see him progress and I'd love to see him get better. But I don't know where he's going to go, because I think it's interesting too. There's a lot of like higher end clubs that are like looking at him, right? It's not like just, these, kind of doldrums of these leagues that are looking at him. It's teams that are in, Europa kind of conversations. So I don't know, Ryan. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, the thing is, I just don't know what you do with us right now. We've got Merlin Roll, who I just think it makes no sense as a transfer still to this day. It makes no sense to me. But I'm sure we'll keep him. He loves to take pictures with Leighton Baines. I can say that about him. But we haven't seen him at center mid, Sean. So I don't know if he looked like a ball progression type guy that would be interesting. He's got a good physical profile. Tim is the type of guy that could go to a lesser league and absolutely kill it. So I hope we get a sell on. But look, to David Moyes' credit, he used Tim pretty well. And Tim Irabunam, as a result, his data profile is incredible. Like in terms of ball winning and the dribbling. If someone watches him closely, they'll probably see the bad decision making. And I think some sophisticated teams will probably stay away from him, but you can't teach some of the things that he does. And we got a lot of use for him in certain situations. Someone might be willing to take that. Hull City, like I said before, is another one. I would think we loan out Harrison Armstrong at this point, right? It's too crowded if you're bringing in Hayden Hackney, right?
You have to. Harrison Armstrong struggled to get in the team with this current setup, right? So you add more bodies, you add more talent. I just don't see a pathway to just consistent playing time, even let's just say if we go through an injury crisis. So I think you have to loan him. I pray to God that if you do loan him, please do not recall him for whatever reason. Just let him play the entire season out.
Don't play him at right wing.
And do not play him at right wing, yes.
So, okay, the big question to me is Idrissa Gana Gueye. What do we do here? Do we think he's gone?
I think he's gone. I really hope I'm wrong, just because I think more than anything, he's an incredible character in the dressing room. I think he is Agent Ghana, right? Like, so you really look at just having
one more
guy
year,
like that.
Man.
Yeah, one more year. But I also think from his standpoint, right, he's still good enough. And I just think if we are going to sign somebody like Keita, like, where does he play? So I just, if he wants to continue to play, right, I think it's just a matter of his intent. And I imagine still, like, he showed that he can still play at a high level last year, and so I just think that I'd be curious on what happens with him. But if I had to make a prediction, I would probably say that he goes.
So if we get Keita, I think we're probably good in this area, but it's not a done deal, and there's still some interesting characters out there too, and maybe bringing someone else in allows us to do a little bit more, and you don't have to worry about Idrissa Gana Gueye. I mean, I would like a proper defensive mid, even an older guy that's a good leader that could sit back, protect the center backs, and was big and physical. So let's go through a couple of these names, the free agent names. I mean, some of these are awesome, Sean. I'm sorry, they're hilarious. I couldn't help myself here. A lot of players that were really wonderful at one point. Some of these are gone. Like Casemiro I put on here for fun, but he's obviously gone to Inter Miami. Alon, contract is up at Botafogo. Obviously not going to happen. We miss him. Some other names in there. Fabinho. No chance with Liverpool. I cannot believe he's still out there. Basuma. I mean, this is, I guess if you're not going to sign Idrissa Gana Gueye, why would you bother with someone like this? Basuma is only 29.
And that's what happens when you play when you're young, right? It's just, you can kind of exude time and still be south of 30.
He's going to go elsewhere, I think.
I know.
I think a lot
he's
of
going to
these
go
guys,
elsewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, Marcelo Brozovic, he is not coming here. I'm sorry. But you know how much money that guy must have made at El Nassr?
Yeah.
That's just unbelievable.
He's set for life. Yeah.
Jefferson Lerma, not coming here. No. In fact, I feel like he might have already signed with someone. But the problem is a lot of these guys that are in the World Cup, you never know. But my guess is a lot of these guys that are frees now at the end of this month, since we're on the 30th, there's some talk about a new contract with him as well. But we're going to see. I bet you these guys move quickly. Do you think Guido Rodriguez solves the athleticism problem in the back, Sean?
I don't think he can even get to the athleticism problem to solve it. So, yeah, I would say no. Nemanja Matic, oh my God.
I love Matic, by the way.
Yeah.
I absolutely love him.
He's had a great career. I give him the guy credit. I mean, he's played for, he hasn't played for as many teams as Axel Witsel, but
he's available.
I know.
Witsel could be ours. He could be ours.
Yeah, it's just that fro has stood the test of time. I think he probably, came out of the womb with that fro, and I don't think it has touched at all. So he has not had to tap into the wealth of Rogaine. So you look at free agents. Arthur, can I interest you in Arthur Avam?
Tell you what, I'd have to watch him a little bit more, but a 21-year-old midfielder with something that can do some of the things that he can do that I've seen a little bit of. It would be amazing if we made a move for someone like this, but why would he join us? I don't think we have the strongest proposition there. Matthias Jensen at Brentford. Is he going somewhere already? Dude, he was outstanding. I thought last year at times. He is very much the type of on-ball player that you would love to take a chance with. I don't know. There's some talk about him. I mean, I think Brentford, I think they activated a 1-year extension. So I think Anne added an option. So I think he's off the table. Frank Kessie, saw him in person. He does not look very quick, but he is a beast. I don't think he's the right profile, but you got to wonder a guy like that. You figure he's going to go somewhere. I think he's going to return to Europe. So a player like that, if you came out of the blue and got someone like this, he's only 29. Some of these are not, we're not signing Leon Goretzka. Unless we want to, mentor Merlin Roller or something, we're going to pay him a fortune. These are not.
On how not to take a penalty when your team needs to,
so. You had to go. It's not too early. We can't let that go. Can we talk about Jonathan Tah? Really?
Yeah.
Well, I guess at least he stepped up and took the thing. But other guys here, I don't. What about relegation here? Do we have any opportunities here? We talk about Souček. Freddie Potts. What do you think Magasa would cost at West Ham?
I like Magasa. I just think
it's not bad.
I think it's not a good sign that he hardly played at all in that team last year. I understand they kind of went through, a bunch of manager change, but yeah, it's not a good sign that he didn't play there. I would say it's a developmental, option, but I'd probably rather have somebody like Mukau. And then you look at Mateus Fernandes, obviously going to Tottenham, but then Edson Alvarez. Edson's kind of, what we talked about in Swiss Army knife of just, you look at Wilfred Ndidi, a guy like that can play multiple positions. I just think he's just not good enough.
Yeah, it's an Alvarez. I mean, he's playing a lot with Mexico. He played a fantastic match the other day. I look, other than the link at West Ham, look, he could play center back, but this is why I hated the Michael Keane extension. You know, that's the type of player I would. I'm not saying Edson Alvarez is the right guy. You know, it could be a multitude of these types of players, but it would have been nice to have someone with a little more positional versatility, you know, and that's just my opinion. You know, that type of guy would have been interesting, you know, because he could also sub in for that 6 and you can keep playing the same way if you want to play with a 6. What about some of these other guys? I mean, Wolves has just so many mids here that I think would be interesting. I mean, they signed Andre to a new deal. I know you like him a lot. There are times where I feel like he's a little bit small and I think it hurts him, but there are other times where he looks so good ball retention progression-wise. I like how active he is, maybe with better teammates. I actually like him better. It looks like João Gomes is probably going to go to Atletico Madrid, but I actually think Andre from a profile makes a lot of sense. Burnley even has a couple guys that are interesting.
Yeah, Andre, I think, was the biggest kind of, disappointment for me, just in the sense of I almost thought it would be a guarantee that he went, but that's what happens when your club is infected with Jorge Mendes. You get benefits like that, but of course you have to deal with situations that you don't want to. But yeah, he would have been the perfect fit. I agree, he's small, but just the technical ability, his intelligence, also too, you look at who he was playing around. Just the lack of defensive shape that they had, led to kind of a lot of the issues that they had. But yeah, Burnley, I think, also Leslie's kind of the only person I would consider. James Ward-Prowse, good God, that he continues to...
He had a high index score. The numbers sound like he could play deeper, Sean. He could solve all of our problems. Moyes paid $35 million for him only a couple years ago. What's $1 million or $2 million now, Sean?
I think $1 million or $2 million would be more beneficial to a foundation, right, that does good for humanity versus paying that for James Ward-Prowse. So
that's very big of you, right?
Yeah.
What about Florentino Luis? We were interested in, I don't know. He didn't look... The league looked a bit much for him. He's a little sloppier on the ball than I was hoping. I thought maybe he would elevate his game, but he wasn't horrendous. It's just hard. I think it's very difficult when a player gets thrown into teams like this where you're getting cut apart a lot to look amazing. There was a lot on him. I actually thought the same thing about Magasa at times at West Ham because they had such lack of mobility in the midfield. So much fell on his shoulders. I just think it's very rare that you see 3 teams going down here that actually have legitimate...
Yeah, I like Florentino Luis. I think it's just, when you look at, for us, it's just, we are so stacked at that position, like in terms of bodies. And the idea of getting 2 defensive midfielders, we definitely need one. But
yeah, if you get a Keita in, there's no reason to have any.
I worry about, just somebody like Florentino Luis, who I think would be a good loan option. But why would the team loan him to us when he's not going to play? So
let's talk about some other loan options.
Yeah.
Douglas Luiz will be available again. Calvin Phillips.
I really feel bad for Calvin Phillips. I just like...
How do you feel bad for him? They gave a £7 million loan fee to him at West Ham.
Not from a monetary point of view. Just like...
It's only 30. Not shocking.
Basuma's 29. It's just crazy. Yunus Musa, just...
what is going on there? It's funny, we were having a conversation with him about him the other day. He was a mainstay in the U.S. national team 2 years ago. He's lost his way. That's a dare to be great type of situation. It's not really a 6, though. The profile doesn't make sense, but yeah. There are a couple other names in here. My boy Ekwa, love him dearly. He would have been the center back type of guy. Okay, cutting through the data. Very interesting names in here, too. Lots of top players in here that we would have no prayer of getting. But, not surprising. First of all, Hayden Hackney's way up on this list. But you've got guys like Elliot Anderson is a guy that I pulled out who, I like a lot, obviously, as does Man City because they're going to pay $120 million for him. But you got guys like Angelo Stiller, Adam Wharton, Pedri, Barco, Enzo. So these are the types of guys in this index that we were using to draw out kind of potentials. Camavinga, obviously, we're not getting him. But the point is, Hackney's in here. Now, again, I don't think he quite has the discipline to play this one, but a couple other names stand out, and we'll go through them very quickly. Rocco Reitz, I know. It's just more of an 8. Yeah, he's going to sign with Leipzig, and he's perfect for Leipzig. He's going to do great there. I would have liked us to do a Dare to Be Great situation last year where we could mix someone in. I've mentioned before Juan Sforza at Vasco. I love this player. He's exactly the type of on-ball six that I would love to get. It doesn't look like, if we're going to go with Keita, like Moyes, I don't think is willing to take a risk in this position. Tommy Doyle, I had to put him on here because it was so funny to talk about. I think he's on a free.
He's there in the numbers, so I mean...
He's just very active. I don't think he's good enough, obviously. I wasn't being entirely serious. Some of these guys we've seen in the World Cup, Lamine Camara is one we have seen. Look, Sean, he's just undersized, but this is the type of guy that could ping it all over the place, that is super quick, that would be... I would love to see a dynamic player in the midfield for us. Maybe Hackney can do some of this stuff, but he's just not going to be defensively reliable enough to play in that deep two. I don't think he's going to be 50 million, right? I mean, do you think he's impressed, though, with Ivory Coast? Pardon me, not Ivory Coast.
Senegal.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I haven't watched much of the World Cup, so it's hard for me to comment on that. But I think what I will say is that he is the guy that when you think of the next Moises Caicedo, right? Not in terms of market value, but just like that stalwart defensive midfielder. I see him as that, just because I imagine he'll come to the Premier League at some point. I really hope it's with us. I don't see that, but I can see that him just being an absolute dominant force if he has a good partner. The physical piece of it is probably his biggest kind of question mark, just not that he can do it. It's just, Premier League going from France to the Premier League is going to be a bit of an adjustment for him. And like you said, he's undersized, but that doesn't mean that he's not strong, and he can absolutely run with it. Defensively, he is just so good. And so, it's just, but Monaco's in a tough situation. So you just wonder what they do.
Know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there are a couple other names that went in here, and this is some of the problem with some of the data here, like Walter Berger at Hoffenheim. He's really not that bad. He's a big guy. He was at Stoke. Yeah, he signed long-term. I mean, this isn't a guy that we're going to get. Hugo Sotelo at Celta Vigo. Again, unlikely. But these are the numbers that when you're doing scouting and the names come up, you got to check them out. It's kind of interesting, some of them. Kodai Sano at NEC from Japan.
Scored a great goal yesterday.
Right. I mean, I actually like this player a lot. He's a really interesting player. I don't know what to say. You know what I mean? He's not going to be, he's not quite the right guy, but this is the type of guy that you look at and you're like, wow, this is what data does. It brings out guys. Lucas D'Acunha, Como, 24. Remember, he was bought for Nice for like nothing 2 years ago. I mean, these are the types of investments I would love for us to make. I mentioned Silas Anderson before. I absolutely adore him. And there's a whole list of guys. We talked about Avon. Michael Ladopo, Calgary. He's really interesting. Cisse, Rene. Like, these are guys that, we just have so many numbers in there. It would have just been, in my opinion, a lot wiser to move for a player like this rather than a Merlin Roll. So, okay. There are a couple other big names from last year, and I want to just go through them very quickly. The first one is Felix Mecca. Dude, he's killing it for Germany. Like, and we said last year we knew that he wasn't gettable. He would have been, 50 million. But if you went big on this position, this would have been the guy that maybe you could have sold for 100 million, or had been there and be just running your midfield for years afterwards. And, you can't get him now. Marc Casado at Barcelona we loved, or thought there was an opportunity, but I think he's too small and he's kind of dropped off. Maximo Perrone, I loved. He was on loan at City, at Como. They bought him permanently. They may have to sell. So, if we don't go with Keita, someone like this. So, and by the way, this last one, you got to love it that we brought him up. I mean, how good does he look in the World Cup?
So, I mean, just so happy for Morocco, just to continue to go. And Bouadi is who we're talking about. 18, and he just looks like
unbelievable.
I mean, he is just so good. And so it's unfortunately we are not of the wonder kids that we can not only afford them, but I think give them the pathway at this moment in time. But I really hope sometime in the future, right, we are able to kind of attract one of these guys.
Right, so I'm going to mention a couple more names that were pulled out of the data that I would have loved to us to take a look at. I don't know if they're gettable, but this is the type of dude if you wanted to bring someone in to make an impact. So Hugo Larsson. He's at Frankfurt. Now, look, last year, no chance. They were asking for crazy numbers for him. But I'll tell you what, Sean, like if you want a guy that can progress the ball up the field, I don't know if we can get a player like this. But like this is where, if you were to go big, and, some talk about Atletico Madrid. It just doesn't seem like anyone's necessarily in for him. Now he's 22 years old. He's 6'2". Like when we talk about guys like Adam Wharton or someone that's, just look, we need a guy that can keep the ball and get it into the final third in the penalty area. And this is like exactly our guy. I don't know. I would be willing to spend a little bit money on a player like this if you could convince him. This is the type of player we need, though, direct from Malmo. Not now at Frankfurt. And we've criticized Moyes for this. We have a problem here where we've got to take chances on guys. But now, Sean, we've got depth in the form of guys we frankly overpaid for from big leagues like Merlin Rolls. So, and you got someone like Harrison Armstrong coming up who maybe could be type of player either. So probably not.
These sections are tough just because there are so many exciting young players, but I think given where we are in terms of our squad structure with the midfield positions, it's not that we don't need this player. We absolutely need Hugo Larsson, and I think he would be like that marquee signing that would really, I think, be somebody that you can kind of build around and really strengthen the midfield. But like you mentioned, it's just I will almost think of Adam Wharton, but much more well-rounded in somebody that he probably doesn't have the passing skill and just vision that Adam Wharton has, but he has everything else. Needs to get a little bit more aggressive, but at the end of the day, I think you can kind of be okay with that, just given everything else that he does. He's an absolute stud. It's just one of those where it almost feels like the Amadou Onana window, right? Where it's like if we kind of really took care of a guy like this and built that relationship, we could get him. But it just seems like we're out of money in regards to the specific position, but then also we already have so many bodies.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, like we talked about Ardon Jashari last year. He went to Milan. They paid 36 million euros for him last summer. His market value's probably dropped. He was immediately injured. He broke his fibula. He's on the World Cup team, not seeing much time for Belgium. This is the type of guy that could get on the ball deeper and really start to control and command games. So maybe you go with a guy like Keita, but maybe you could even loan to buy this guy. Milan is going to have to move players. So there are other options out there. And I say if you're going to go back to South America, I love my boy Pablo Maia. He's the Energizer Bunny type guy. You want to be deep on the ball, super active, making himself available. The player we just don't have. I think he'd be awesome for Moyes. He's combative. He's a tough guy. He's stocky, strong. He's athletic. These are the types of guys that I really wish that we would spend a little more time in. I just think that Moyes is going to pick someone that he feels like is probably less risky. I don't know if Keita's that guy, but these are other guys that I would hope we would maybe look at. Is there anyone from the good old USA?
I mean, Weston McKennie, right? But it's just, once again, the money doesn't match. It's just...
Berhalter.
Sebi Berhalter, yeah. Well, his dad would be an assistant coach on the bench, I'm sure.
Oh, man, so, don't do that. Don't even say that. But I mean, look, this is one where, we were doing the assessment here. There are lots of interesting names in here and lots of players that I really love and find very interesting. But if Keita's the guy, I'm not upset with that. Like, I think that's okay. I think in that maybe allows us to go bigger at some of the other positions. The numbers are adding up. I think there's some discussion on Tyreek George. It looks like we might get him for under the option. We'll talk about him when we get into wingers. I think he showed some signs of being a good player, but we're cutting into the budget now. So it's just, unless we have sales, which we may still have some sales, maybe we could go bigger in some other areas. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world if we go in and if you can get a Keita for a decent price, like a 20 million, he might be really useful. And there's less risk with that. I'm not convinced about Moyes. I want to see more dare to be great players that have more raw talent. Moyes is too risk averse to that. I get that. But to me, if you get a player like that, it'll probably at least hold their value, and you could come in and make a new manager and a new recruitment team could come in and make the team their own. So I don't see a ton of risk in a player like that. I think he in particular looks good. Do we think this is the guy, or do you think he's going to do something kind of off the mark? Or is there anyone in here, Sean, that you're like, man, that would be the dream scenario for us?
I think Keita makes the most sense because I feel like when you think of the committee in our organizational structure, it feels like the one guy that pretty much I think everybody can agree upon. When you look at the sixth position per se, and then also looking at just the general value of what you have to spend, right, for what you have to get. I love Pablo Maia. I really loved like watching him last season, and just kind of when we were doing our team assessments, I think he would be a good fit as well. I also like Mukau, right? So if they wanted to say, hey, we believe in Mukau, a little bit more of a project, but somebody that I think has a higher ceiling, and everyone can agree on that. So I think there's some names here. I like that we're at least trending in the right direction with this one in my Keita. So I hope that ends up being the case, because I think, especially if they can get it done early, right? Like in the next 2 weeks or so, you get kind of a full training camp, and then preseason. It would do a world of good, I think, to finally fill a position of need. So I think there's some exciting names here. I just think, unfortunately, the hard part is we are very conflated in this specific position. Like, it's just we have too many guys that kind of do too many of the same things.
Yeah, to me, Merlin Roll still is just a really not. I mean, I actually think he has some talent too. It's just a guy that I think you got to actually see what you got here. You know what I mean? Like when we saw him in the U21s, he looked great. On the ball guy, a progression guy, like could be that type of center mid, but we have too many guys in that position. I would have probably, I like Keita. He's a good player. I would probably have gone bigger in terms of high risk, higher talent. I like Shea Charles, maybe a Mukau. And the reason why I'd say that is because as much as I don't like Jimmy Garner as the deeper of the two midfield pair, I don't think Moyes is ever going to play with this on-ball type 6 guy. I don't think he's ever really going to try and control games. So to me, I probably would have taken someone that, has the athletic profile. Not saying that Keita doesn't. Like Shea Charles, the example I gave. Is very conservative defensively, can kind of play deeper. He's a very good athlete, very responsible. You can build some of the on-ball stuff. He might be a better fit. Leeds looks like they've been pretty aggressive. 25 million pounds, I think, was offered for him. I don't think that's a crazy price for him. I would love to go get a guy like Jashari. I just think he's a little bit more of a dynamic player. That would be the direction I go. But of the realistic guys we've been linked with, I think Mukau and Charles would be guys that I would lean to before Keita. But I like Keita. And I think Keita you might be able to get for a decent price. So he's my type of player, very different than a Hayden Hackney, like a very conservative, very smart, very controlled player. So I don't think we've gone wrong here if that's the one.
No, and with that, I think the beauty of these is that we only talked about 3 positions, but we're already an hour and 15 in. And so appreciate you holding on with us. There is a lot more to come. And so, as you know, Everton has a lot of positions of need. We will attack every position, whether we have a surplus or a deficit. And Ryan, any final thoughts before we send this one off?
Yeah, look, I have concerns about Hayden Hackney. I don't necessarily like the way he plays. I think he's very risky. Maybe he can adjust. I think he will need to adjust. If he can, he could be effective, but I don't know. I think we still need a true 6. If it's Keita, those two are very different players, and maybe that would work. I just think it's a real shame that Charlie Alcaraz just seems to be out of the picture. I think he's a very good player.
Can't disagree with any of that. Thanks again for tuning in, everyone. Have a great summer. Fun World Cup still ahead. And with that, we will catch you next time for the next part of the team assessment.
The Toffees.